through that because I failed to unmute my microphone.
Also, don't forget to record.
I did start recording.
Yeah, I think I saw.
Yes.
it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a report.
Yeah.
So with that, I know that we have some new members, but also some new folks in the room, so maybe we'll just take a moment and do a quick introduction. I'll just go around the room so everybody knows who's who at this point. Dan, would you mind starting over there?
I'm Dan Rosenzweig. I'm the president and CEO of Habitat for Charlotte.
Sunshine Mathon at Piedmont and Wax.
Let's see, I'm the Senior VP for Operations and State Government Relations at UVA.
I'm Annette Hyde. I'm the new chair of the Piedmont Workforce Development.
Ned Galloway, I represent Amber County on the Board of Supervisors and the chair here.
William Park, Pinnacle Construction.
Dave Norris, Carr Foundation.
Andrea Madison, Fluvanna Louisa Housing Foundation.
I'm Kim Highland, the director of the Fluvanna Louisa Housing Foundation.
Emily Dreyfus, Legal Aid Justice Center.
Ruth Emmerich, TJPDC.
Let's go ahead and swing through the back here. So
I'm Gretchen Thomas, TJPDC.
Lori Jacobson,
David Pritchett, Mayor Board of TJPC.
Kate gets a more agenda specific spot later.
Yes.
I'm Logan, I'm with the TJPC as well. Stuart Cole, Piedmont Lines.
Hi, good afternoon, Alicia Garcia, Director of Real Estate Development with PHA.
Nice. Welcome to all. We will move to the second item, comments from the public. Is there anyone here who wishes to give public comment today? Is there anybody online who wishes to give public comment? Seeing none, then we will move past public comment. So on the consent agenda, we have the minutes of the June 26, 24 meeting and the fiscal year 25 financials, which was included in the packet. Ruth, do you have any notes on the financials you want to review?
Yeah, so I took a little bit of a different approach in preparing the financials for everyone's review. Specifically, I took our expenditures to date and added those in next to the budgeted cost for the year. And I also put in the amount remaining for each, thank you, for each category. Unfortunately, our expense categories in the budget are a little bit more granular than the way we record them in our financial system. And so they don't necessarily track exactly. So you'll see, for instance, the staff time is all lumped together. But I just thought this would be a more helpful way for you all to understand exactly how the funds for the RHP are being used. And if you have particular questions, such as why the website maintenance and AmeriCorps Vista amount is higher than budgeted, I would be happy to answer.
Now that you brought it up.
Yes, so the reason that is higher than it anticipated is that the website updates that our prior Vista did in creating the data dashboard for affordable housing and also the policy matrix cost a little bit more in terms of services provided by our web host than we expected or than we anticipated, but not so much so that we decided that it was a project to be canceled. So some of the cost was incurred last year and some of it was incurred this year, but it's just a little bit higher than expected.
And the contribution to the summit would be a payback, right? That would eventually be.
Yeah, so you'll see the contribution to the summit. I took those funds out of this budget and they've been applied to a separate budget for the summit specifically. And we'll be having an update on the summit today.
Awesome. Any other questions or comments about financials? Okay, we're one person short by my count at this point for a quorum, so we'll wait till we get the quorum to approve those. No other action items today, so that will move us to under number 5, new business. So we were talking in the the pre-agenda meeting was about, and a little bit of the last executive committee meeting about having some of the larger housing projects at the quarterly meeting, come give some updates of what work's going on. So like Dan Sunshine, we might be coming and asking a request for guidance on a couple of bigger projects you guys are working around with December. So we had a list that was more than what we could just jam into one. So just be on the watch for that invite if that comes out. But we appreciate that today, the first presentation will be from Kim Highland on the Fluvanna Louisa Housing Foundation activities. So I'm gonna
Thank
hand it
you.
over to you.
Okay, and Ruth, can you help us? How do I do the presentation? Here, I was- Oh, thank you. She's so good.
You say that and then it goes slightly wrong.
Thank you. So thanks for having us here today to talk about this. We're pretty excited. As you guys know, it's been really difficult in the rural areas to get some larger affordable housing projects going. Andrea Madison has joined us this year, and she is heading up the operations for, so if it gets a little bit more technical, she'll be able to handle some of the questions for the actual construction site. So we're thrilled to have her experience and joining the Fluvanna Louisa Housing Foundation. So we have a lot of talent for a very small organization. So I'm gonna dive in real quick, and if you guys have questions, please let me know. I'm gonna back up just a little bit though, to explain how we arrived at the solutions that we did. We have a very robust repairs program, and we've been working on capacity for the past 4 years, and we've really kind of reached a very optimal space for what the Housing Foundation can handle at this stage, how many repairs we're doing. So what does that mean for our particular area? So we completed 100 projects last year for home repairs. And these are examples of the types of repairs that we do and we concentrate on. This leads us to getting a lot of data from our region, just sort of through the people that we are helping. That might be a quorum with Margaret.
Okay, physical.
Oh, gotcha. So we've been able to increase capacity with increasing grants. This is just sort of the volume, and thank you TJPDC. You guys have been a big part of that through HPG grants that we've been able to increase our volumes. A very big component of that. So we were able to gather more information about what types of AMI that most of our clients, where we can group them. So most of them fall below 50% AMI. Many fall below 25% AMI in the rural counties. A little further data dive. Davey Sell and I talked about this a lot. Very difficult to obtain real data numbers in the rural areas. I think we're very underreported in both Fluvanna and Louisa counties. For people who are low income, have very severe housing needs, it's just very difficult to accumulate the data. However, as I was looking for a spot in Louisa, right, that isn't skewed by Lake Anna, I couldn't find one for all of Louisa County that really demonstrated what's going on in Bumpus or Mineral or Gordonsville or one of the other many pockets. As I looked at Fluvanna though, Fork Union was a large enough area where we could pull more of that data that told a little bit more of the story of what's going on in the rural areas. So the vacancy rates were 0% at the time for rental units. The value, whoops, sorry about that. My computer's very sensitive. What really stood out to me in some of this, I tried to highlight it. Median home age, even though Fluvanna County and Louisa happens to be the same, it's 26 years old. But Fork Union, it was 70 years old. And also 30% of those units were valued between $40,000 and $80,000. Now, people who live in Lake Monticello have asked me, why do you think that is? Do you think they're being undervalued? No, I don't think they're being undervalued. They're in that poor of a condition. Also, you can see, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of data to compare it to for US, Virginia, and then even Fluvanna, some of the numbers for the whole county don't match up with what you see in Fork Union. Still, the bulk of the housing units down there are under 150,000. I'm missing one of my. Yeah, one of them didn't come up on here. The other slide told the story of how old the units are. 70% of them were built before 1970. So a huge amount of older housing, very poor condition housing. And then in the rural counties, we have about 21% of our population is elderly. So if older people, low income, old houses, don't have funding to fix those. So that's what got us so engaged with our repair program and why it was so important that we really get involved with that. And it's making a serious dent. However, we go to a lot of houses that we cannot put a new roof on it, right? You guys deal with this every day. We put a new roof on, the whole house collapses. We have other problems that, are structurally significant, foundation problems where we really need to work on getting those houses raised and put up new houses. So what do we do before we even get to that point? We have a successful model in Louisa County where we just have 4 one-bedroom units where we reserve for seniors. They're about 525 square feet, so slightly smaller than what this shows. This is showing, if you guys can see it, and actually I brought a couple of printouts that we have. If you guys want to pass that around, I'm gonna skip you because you see this. This shows 2 one-bedroom units, and how we have them set up in Louisa County is in a little courtyard setting, so that they can all interact together. There's a picnic table between them. You have a sense of community. They are large enough for 1 person, pretty tight, I think, for 2 people. But nobody has ever complained about them being too small. So the one-bedroom units have worked very well. The other statistic that we have in the rural counties is the median home size is 2.9 people. So we have less than 3 people. And what do builders build, right? 3 and 4 bedroom homes. So we see that frequently. We don't have apartment buildings in the rural areas. We might have trailers, but we don't have apartment buildings. So there's a lack of availability of one-bedroom units. We have washers, dryers. They are all ADA compliant, wheelchair accessible, very, very successful units. We always have a wait list for them. We have many people always trying to get into these units. We do, very low turnover. Most of our vacancies happen because the current tenant passes away. We do charge 30% of their income, which is frequently less than $300 for their rent. So it is important that we find funding for these units because they barely maintain themselves with the income that we bring in. And this particular unit is a modular design, so we can fit it on 1 truck. It is it's about 600 square feet, might be 599. Yeah, 599. So it's a little bit bigger, but we slightly redesigned our current design to flow a little bit better and so that it would fit in 1 truck. So we could have cranes there, 1 truck per unit when they're delivered. Yeah, this is a duplex that's shown. We are getting pricing where we're being able to put these in place for about $100,000 each. We've also come up with a 2-bedroom design to accommodate small families, teachers, workers, first responders, EMTs, cashiers, people who work in the community, but they cannot find housing that is affordable nearby them. So this would be designed also as a modular unit. You could fit, there's 2 components to it. You marry those together on site. And these are coming in about 140,000 complete, not including site development. This is the design that we've come up with for Louisa County. If you guys see in the lower right here is actually our office space. Next door to us is the Resource Council building, which is the local food bank for Louisa County. there is a lovely lot next to us that's wooded, that was given to us by the county of Louisa. I say lovely because there's train tracks right here. So we have to pass water and sewer. There's water and sewer available close by, but between the railroad tracks and the road. But it is in proximity, which is extremely rare for the rural areas. So that's a huge, as we go through these rural housing group discussions, infrastructure is our biggest impediment in having water and sewer available, road structure, electricity, any kind of infrastructure to help us build. As we went through all of our HUD and home compliance, we realized that there is a significant portion of this that is in wetlands. So we had to then have wetlands compliance. We have nutrient credits and wetlands credits, which is going to raise the price of our free property to 150,000 just with those. So, but we worked around it. We redesigned it a bit so that we could fit as many units as we could in there. So we ended up with 8 one-bedroom units here, and as you'll see it, I don't know if you can see my mouse very well. So we have 8 one-bedroom units in a cluster, another 8 one-bedroom units in another cluster, and then these 1 through 9 are all 2-bedroom units. So significantly, we expect that the 1-bedroom units will be for seniors. It won't be entirely due to home ARP funds that we'll be using on that. But they will be for people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness, which is usually the elderly in our environment. The 2-bedroom units, we expect to have teachers and workforce housing. What else have we got? This is just a later rendition showing the parking plan. And Fluvanna, very similarly, we did have to purchase land in Fluvanna. This setup takes a little longer to get used to and be able to figure it out. If anybody here has worked with Fluvanna, it's too bad Keith isn't here today because he'll tell you. There are some special circumstances where you can get in rural cluster subdivision, and that's what we had to do here. We wanted to do the same concept where we had 8 one-bedroom units in a nice little courtyard setting. We weren't able to do that and get the zoning. So zoning being, right, everybody here is very familiar with the problems of zoning over and over again. And then with affordable housing and trying to have any kind of density, this is what we ended up with. But we were able to get it. Each of these lots shows a duplex of 2 one-bedroom units. Again, we're finding very heavily seniors, houses that are falling down. Let's move them into these houses. The Housing Foundation can then purchase the lands that the previous house was in, prepare that with another house for a family to purchase and set them up for home ownership, and have the senior or whoever's moving into these units be taken care of in the meanwhile. There is 1 lot that has a 2-bedroom unit on it, or it could be a 3-bedroom unit. We expect to have somebody who could take care of the premises, help with the seniors that are in the area, get them to appointments, or we'll be able to bring in services. Fork Union is pretty remote area, so bringing services in to 16 units would be very helpful for Jaunt to pick up people, bring in medical services to them. And this particular lot is in pretty good proximity to the actual Fork Union area. I think that's pretty much all I have for the.
Those roughly 1 acre lots, is that what I'm seeing?
Yes, you're right, Sunshine, they are. Yeah. I did have some more just a little bit. Just kind of ran through that. Yeah, so there's no well and there's no public water and sewer for the Fluvanna lot. So each of those will require a septic system for the lot. So 2 units will work off of 1 well and 1 septic system. We're trying to help people age in place. So many of these people in these older dilapidated homes, they don't want to leave, right? They've lived there their whole lives. They're older. They have family and friends there, their churches there, their whole world. They know they need to get out of their house and they can't maintain it, but they don't have anywhere to go in this area. So we're hoping to help people at least age in place in the Fork Union area and in Louisa with that. The Fluvanna project is about $2.5 million. Of that, just over 725,000 has been identified. We're talking about doing CDBG application for that. Braiding funding with home funds. We have sold off a number of our rental units, and we have several more that we will be selling and setting people up for home ownership. Perhaps ASNH, Virginia Housing, or whatever their name is now. What's your saying? And private donations. So all of those, braiding them together. This type of a forum is perfect for this conversation, right? Because we're trying to marry all of these different groups together to help bring this to fruition. The Louisa project will be about $4.5 million, of which $1.5 million has been identified. We are staging the process and trying to keep it as tight as possible. It's going to be about 820,000 for water and sewer access because we have to go underneath the railroad. And it is a pressurized sewer main, so we have to have a pump grinder station put in. But we do have funds identified for that already that are reserved. Again, braiding funding with those same sources. Did you have anything with that?
One question I have is, I presume you had conversations with USDRD, rural development, and is there any opportunity that you have seen or came close to getting funding or low cost lending or anything from RD or?
Rural development, these are gonna be rental units. Yeah. So, and these USDA's real quick on picking up on stuff, so. It's a little bit of a constraint, because we've been trying to use them heavily for their 504 program and trying to get people set up with the 502. Their 30-day turnaround time is actually about a year. So it's been a real struggle to get funding to, they have a great program where seniors can get $10,000 for home repairs. Especially for people who are already in a bad position, it's worse than getting a mortgage. The paperwork is extraordinary, even with us helping. And then their follow through has been sorely lacking. They're improving, but it's
been problematic.
yeah, it would be a great program. It would be such a great program. And these are set up to be rental units for us. Yes.
Your Louisa project, have you already filed your site plan?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, because stormwater regs changed July 1st and.
We had to purchase $118,000 of nutrient credits just for that.
Even with the new regs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, usually what we found, that goes down with the new regs.
If we're really lucky and something else happens, that would be great. Yeah. So far, that's not been our experience.
And then for review,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
we actually are submitting our response to the first round of comments either today or tomorrow, but it should be submitted, so we're in the process of that review.
Okay.
We have not gotten review comments
Yeah.
yet, so that would be,
Good luck with that.
yeah.
And you all might not be aware, but we've got 124 units in Fluvanna that should come online Friday.
Okay, right.
So to
I've
your
been
point,
speaking to Brittany.
yeah, so to your point, we've been waiting for water for 6 months. So
Yes.
we've been sitting there with buildings that we couldn't get water to, so
Right.
we feel your pain.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I know you guys are right in the mix of it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
hopefully we'll get this.
We've been trying to refer people over to Brittany Gray to
Yeah.
get them into that housing and get as many people in that area served. So yeah, that's a great project.
What's the AMI for that? What is it?
Fluvanna is the same as Charlottesville. Louisa is lower. And I don't know why, because that's not really the experience that I'm seeing. I'm sure it's going to change. Louisa is the only one, we were just talking about this in the director's meeting, that's different than all the whole Charlottesville area.
What do you know where it's from?
For how many people? For the total, it's right around 100,000. Yeah.
Regarding like you said about zoning, like the community rentals we're seeing the same issue where
Mhm.
people want to sell next to us in rural areas. And at a discount rate, but even with that discount rate, the only way the math works is if we're able to do 2 or 3 units, at least,
Right,
and it's just not, permissible, and so. I mean, I feel like this body is the kind of body that can help with advocating for changes in zoning.
right. So with the Montana miracle, you guys are probably all familiar with that. They changed, anywhere in Montana that could have a single family house could be zoned for a duplex. Fluvanna would not vote for that, I can tell you, but it would have to come from the state level.
I don't think we would either.
Yeah, that Louisa wouldn't either, although Louisa allows ADU units by right on a property, so long as they're half the size of the main dwelling.
Have you found there's any like arguments around like senior housing or housing for veterans that seems to break through politically more? Or are you pretty much in an environment where you assume it's gonna have to be a by right project where funding doesn't include like the locality?
We have had tremendous luck. We have had unanimous approval for our projects. Seniors have been huge, yeah. And it's, local seniors who need housing is the priority. So that has really resonated with our board of supervisors in both counties. I will say Louisa's been a little bit more progressive with it and trying to help us because they're getting a little more push right from Northern Virginia and from Richmond and from Charlottesville. Fluvanna's a little more isolated still. Just being south of 64, I think they're a little bit more insulated. But I do think that's gonna.
I think when Virginia Housing came to one of our meetings and saw the public that were there, they were expecting a bunch of negative, NIMBY, typical, and it was the opposite. Everybody was in favor. How soon can you get it? I get calls every week, almost every day. Have you started yet? Can we get on wait list? When are those gonna be on? We're ready. Like, people are excited. And both people that are hoping to move into these units, but also just the community in general has been very supportive. So it is.
I think it's the right place,
Yeah.
right time, right look,
And I know the need.
right need, yes. So it's been heavily supported. We really haven't had any NIMBY problems. We're really pleased by the community backing. Yeah, we had a luncheon open to the public at a local restaurant in Louisa to kind of go share it. And yeah, Virginia Housing was floored. They figured half the people showed up to protest it, and everyone was there to support it. So we've been fortunate.
That's great, thanks. What are the regional housing partnership did a study and then some recommendations for some policy changes. I don't know whether, I don't think any of them have been taken up by Louisa government. Is there any movement towards creation of a housing fund, towards rezoning, or are there specific policy initiatives that you would suggest or recommend that this body think about advocating or studying?
It's the political dynamic in those areas. So I do think that's, I think that's helped us extraordinarily is we live there. I'm the first director of the Fluvanna Louisa Housing Foundation that lives in the community that we serve. That's really been crucial, especially Fluvanna is difficult to deal with. And I love where I live, but it's politically, it's a little bit of a hot potato, right? But I think if you can get people engaged in these conversations, right? We have some successes here that we can duplicate. I think you're gonna open their eyes a bit. They're more open to it than they have been in the past. And as you know, solving some major problems like 605 would really help push them in the right direction. Louisa much more so than Fluvanna is having to make some changes. The income for the county is going to change dramatically in the next couple of years. That's going to allow them to perhaps entertain sometimes because anybody who works in Louisa County cannot afford to live there now.
If you ever need help with Fluvanna, I live in Kingston.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I knew that, Lewis. Yeah, we're neighbors. And it's a little more difficult to engage with Fluvanna County to make sure, to get them on board. They want to, I think they genuinely want to. They're just getting them through all of the hoops. has been difficult, but, there's definitely some room there, and they'll, you know, this was sort of the right size project. We had to buy 25 acres in order to make this project work. Fortunately, when we bought it from a church. This was what they wanted to do too. So we had an engaged seller, kind of like, you know, at the trailer park in Charlottesville, right? So if you have someone who's engaged as a seller who you can work with, that was helpful.
Earlier on, you mentioned something about data, getting data or something, there was a problem with that.
In rural areas, sort of making sure you actually have all the data points that you need that are accurate is very, very difficult.
Doing research by zip code in a rural community is not as accurately descriptive of the situation that it can be in a more urban setting. So, because the lower incomes tend to be pocketed in parts of multiple zip codes, and so it doesn't really capture the amount of low income and where it's located.
Yeah.
So it's made it really difficult for us to extract how much it is and really pull the data points for a county accurately.
Mineral around it is very, very poverty stricken, but it is close enough to Lake Anna, and some of the highest end homes in the county
It gets
is
lumped in
completely
together
skewed.
and
Yeah.
negate.
Yeah, so when we go to get funding, it doesn't show up as an area of need. And homelessness is very different in rural areas. You don't see them, they're not on a park bench, they're in the woods, in a shed. You know, there's maybe a shed, yeah. But we have literally pulled people out of the woods or living in a camper. In both counties, you can't just live in your camper on your property, but nobody complains, nobody's knocking on that camper door, and there's a lot of people who live in campers. There's a whole area in Louisa where it's a whole village. So none of that goes into the data accumulation as well. And convincing, you know, in Fluvanna, even convincing some people that there's an issue is difficult because the data does not clearly demonstrate there's a problem. But if they went to the homes that we went to, they would see it more regularly. And recently I've had EMTs who have volunteered to let people do a ride along. Said, hey, if you want to have some supervisors come out and do a ride along, you will see things that you didn't know existed in this country, much less in your backyard.
So the counties aren't going to do anything to help tighten up that data.
No, and it's difficult. They don't get funding, and we have to compete for CDBG funds, right? We don't get any funds handed down for housing, but Brittany and I have been talking about that. She said, well, why don't we have, you know, a housing authority in these counties? And I do think we need to change the perception. We've made huge inroads, but there's a long way to go. So this has been helpful for me to get them more engaged. And that's, you know, the rural housing discussion groups, I think, is really helpful because a bunch of people from Nelson County showed up, right? And they were heavily engaged. So I would pull my people from Louisa and Fluvanna and go, come on, guys. Or, you know, other counties are getting involved in this. We need to be a part of it.
And it's not just Charlottesville.
Yes, yes.
Any other questions or remarks? I appreciate you giving us the update. And the
Thank
report,
you.
and
Thanks for your time.
I'm thrilled that the discussion groups is working for the rural.
Yes.
That was kind of the kickoff topic in the area. We were hoping that would be the case for us. So
Yes.
that's great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the next item, B under number 5, the CAR Foundation overview and activities with Mr. Morris with us today. And this is one where I have to admit, because if somebody asked me, what's that new foundation at CAR doing, I wouldn't necessarily be able to answer the question. So we were hoping, you know, as both the newest member, we'll all have a chance to learn a little bit more about the CAR Foundation.
Thank you for the opportunity. Unfortunately, I was hoping to use this opportunity to debut a short new informational video about the CAR Foundation to answer that question. What is the CAR Foundation? And several of the people in this room are actually in that video. But unfortunately, it's taken a few extra days to bake in the oven, so you're gonna have to settle for an oral report instead, but I would love to, I'll send the video, the link to the video out on the partnership email list, so you can all see it. So the Carr Foundation, many of you know that the real estate community here in Charleston, Albemarle, and beyond has been involved in housing issues for decades and in various ways, whether it's through volunteering. There was a big push about 15 years ago to create a workforce housing fund through the Carr community, through Carr itself. And they raised about $500,000 to help teachers, police officers, firemen, firewomen, and other public service workers to be able to become first-time home buyers in the communities that they served. And that was a partnership with Piedmont Housing Alliance. Made quite a number of loans. As those loans have been paid back, the money's just been sitting in a pot, and they decided a couple years ago to create a foundation with those dollars as seed funds to be able to ramp up the efforts of the real estate community to make an impact on affordable housing issues here in our region, and to leverage the time, talent, treasure, and resources of the realtor community and its partners to do that. So earlier this year, so last year, they went through a strategic planning effort to figure out what that would look like. Earlier this year, and they created a board of directors and got the infrastructure in place. Earlier this year, they hired their first staff person, myself, to get this moving. So about 6 or 7 months into it now, I'm really excited to be working with the realtor community and its partners to really try and make an impact and move the needle on affordable housing. We have sort of set forth 4 programmatic goals and focus areas, I should say, for the work of the foundation. They're all named here on this sheet. First is to continue to raise money from within the realtor community and again from its partners to invest in innovative and effective affordable housing solutions. We've already had conversations, for instance, with the Community Land Trust about ways that we might be able to support in a financial way and otherwise the work of the Land Trust. We have a partnership with AHIP that we're looking to invest in, and otherwise just trying to figure out how the realtor community can be involved and supportive in a funding manner to allow some of these initiatives to move forward. Secondly is volunteer engagement. And so how do we solicit volunteers from among the Carr community and its partners to get involved in affordable housing initiatives? Our first foray when it comes to volunteer engagement is a new partnership that's underway now with Habitat through their Pathways program, getting realtors and others involved as volunteer mentors and advocates for families that are participating in the Pathways program. Dan, do you want, for anybody who doesn't know about the Pathways program, do you want to tell us what that is?
Sure, it's habitat without a house. We can only build so many houses, we only have so much capacity, but we do have some families who through our housing counseling programs are able to get to a place where their credit's good enough to leverage a third-party loan. So the idea is that we provide a soft second, we partner with others to help give them the lift that they need so that they can get into the starter home market. And we work with realtors who discount commissions, we work with brokers who don't take fees, et cetera, to try to leverage.
Yeah, so the idea there is to increase realtor involvement with the Pathways families and help get them on the way of home ownership. Third is awareness raising and education. So how do we help educate, bring more attention to affordable housing needs and resources and opportunities in our community? Probably about 5 months ago now, you may have seen an article in Charlottesville Tomorrow where they were talking about how there's all these affordable housing resources around the community, but there's no like one-stop shop in terms of one place for people to go and learn about these resources and how to access these resources. And they said that they would just take the lead on creating something. Well, simultaneously, literally the week before, our board for the Carr Foundation had a meeting where one of our board members said, you know, there's all these scattered housing resources around and nobody really knows how to access them or what the eligibility criteria are or whatnot. Maybe we should create a resource guide. So instead of each of us creating our own resource guides, we are collaborating with Charlottesville Tomorrow. That is very close to being launched. Stay tuned. So this fall, it'll be a very accessible, user-friendly online resource guide to local affordable housing resources. So we're very excited about that collaboration. And we'll continue to do more when it comes to awareness raising and education about housing needs and resources and opportunities. And then last but certainly not least, is public policy advocacy. And so one of the first initiatives there is how do we encourage local governments to create, as we mentioned earlier, with some of the rural counties, and I know Almar was also considering is how do we encourage local governments to create dedicated housing funds in their budgets. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we're doing programmatically with the foundation. We have a new website that's about to be launched at carfoundation.org, so you can always visit that hopefully very soon and learn more about our work and how people can get involved. And I'm happy to answer any questions people have. Questions?
Well, first of all, let me say I'm thrilled that you're the foundational director, because in many ways as mayor of Charlottesville, you were foundational to creating a housing fund and growing the housing program. What it is, so I feel really confident that you're doing great things, so thanks for stepping up. Bullet point number 1, funding. Can you explain to us your strategy for growing the pie rather than spreading it around?
Yeah, in terms of the actual, like, do you want to make sure we're not taking from a donor who might?
Yeah, I mean, this is a common challenge in the philanthropic world now. There are a lot of foundations that are pass-throughs now. They're created to raise money to then dole it out rather than individual nonprofits raising money. And the question is always, it's always great if it's growing the pie, and not so great if it's spreading it around. So what can you show to determine your strategy?
Yeah, I mean, our basic premise is that the real estate community is undertapped when it comes to its potential to invest and support projects like many of the ones we've been hearing about in a financial way. So we know that when we challenged them, like we did when they created the Workforce Housing Fund, the real estate community stepped up in a pretty robust way and in very short order raised about $500,000 for that program. And we feel like the opportunity is there to engage with that community and again our partners, which includes the home builders and lenders and others, so that we're not just, as you say, kind of taking from Peter to pay Paul, but we're actually making Peter bigger. That's a very confused metaphor, yeah, so that's our premise, and so we have a fundraising committee that's meeting assiduously right now to come figure out a strategy for making that happen, and what does that look like, and doing it in a collaborative way. So, for instance, we were invited not too long ago to a meeting about, I don't know if it's formalized yet, but a potential funders collaborative for the land trust, where the various funders were involved, or at least attended, and hopefully be involved in working together to fund that particular initiative. We have several board members that are very passionate about the land trust as one example. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
in process.
Yeah, it's in process.
Yeah. All right. Other questions? Awesome. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
So this will take us to item 6, old business. We have a housing study update. That'll be before we start that. Lori,
Thank you. Lori Jean Talloon. I'm the regional program manager here at TJVC. So back in 2019, the first regional housing needs assessment was conducted, as everyone who was here at the time was a part of that. And then as a result came the 2021, what Dan was referencing, the package of strategies that were suggested for each of the localities. And yes, some have been undertaken, some not. It kind of depends on the situation. We have this opportunity to work with the Virginia Center for Housing Research, VCHR, which is based in Virginia Tech. They contract with the state of Virginia, DHCD, to provide a lot of research and data services around housing around the state. They have conducted needs assessments in areas like Stanton, Augusta, Waynesboro, the Danville area, Southside, other more rural areas, and we're maybe a little bit more populated in some ways than some of those localities. But still, we have a large swath of rural regions, and so they have this specialization to be able to understand housing in rural areas, especially where data is challenging to obtain or come by and make sense of. So they have a really interesting process. So we've been working with them for about a year, just talking about what would the scope of work be, what would this process look like if we were to do it in this region. We've been talking with funders and have been raising a fair amount of money, and I'll share a little bit about that in a second. But their practice is to work with PDCs like us and with bodies like the RHP, although I don't think there are lots of versions of this out there. And to ensure that when they come in and they produce this study, it can be replicated and updated by people in the region over time. So part of what they do is they provide training. So anyone on this body would be welcome to join. We already have some folks who have signed up to be part of it, but when they come in, we're assuming it'll start in January 2025. The first thing that they're going to do is meet with people and hear some local perspectives, but they're going to then provide 7 trainings. 5 of them are kind of, if you're in, you got to commit to all 5, and then a final 2 that go through more complicated data analysis that not everybody will want, but some of us will. And so there will be folks from nonprofits, locality staff, TJPDC staff who will be receiving training. And the way that they're able to do that is, and not increase the funding that we're then having to give them, is by having us then in between the trainings going and collecting all the data and putting it into practice, kind of doing our homework. And so that both gives us the skills then to continue what they've started, while us producing a really great document that takes all the data that we can find through all the avenues that they train us in using. So it's a really cool way to do a housing needs assessment. Then they will take all that data and analyze it and do a literature review, and then there's a whole qualitative data process of specific focus groups and interviews with stakeholders. They're really adamant about, okay, we can look at the numbers, but we don't live in your region, so we're not going to interpret the numbers without listening to local people and how they interpret those numbers and what's really happening locally. So that's also a really great part of what they do. So that's kind of the needs assessment portion. What we want is to have up-to-date data about our region. We want to be able to train the staff of the PDC, other folks who are on boards like the RHP, locality staff, nonprofit staff who are interested, to gather and analyze the data. And then of course, identify what the needs are and have up-to-date data for grant applications and just decision-making processes all around our region. So ultimately, then we would have a comprehensive report at the end and a consumer report that's a part of that. But then the final piece that they'll be doing is with Housing Forward Virginia with Jonathan Knopf, if some of you guys know him. And he, again, has partnered with them in doing this process. And my understanding is that he kind of sits through a lot of the meetings. He sits through the whole process and gets to know people and listens to the region the whole time. And then he kind of, basically the way he said it in our planning management team meeting was that he's going to present, maybe up to 24 different strategies based on, okay, here's what I've learned about your region, here's what the data shows, here's what you need. Here are 24 different strategies that cover the gamut of different types of strategies that you can use. Which ones are politically feasible? Which ones do you want to do? Which feel the most relevant? And he sits with stakeholders, primarily locality staff, and then make sure that the decision makers are on board. So that final product of like the strategies piece this time around, I mean, I think some parts of the strategies piece last time around did, depending on the locality, there were some localities that were like, yes, we are putting our stamp on this, and some, I'm not sure. Whereas this time around, it would really be whoever is participating in that part of this study, his whole process is he's not going to put it in if it's not going to be likely to be done or feasible. We're just not going to write it down and say that we're going to do it if we're not going to do it. Because I know that we kind of see communities getting a little disgruntled, right, if that process happens too often and follow through doesn't happen. So that is kind of an exciting part of it. The challenge here is locality commitment to it. So we have received letters of support from every locality that's part of our PDC. But we have kind of stated to them that if there's not financial, most of the funding is going to come from Virginia Housing and DHCD as planning grants. the city of Charlottesville and the county of Albemarle have already committed quite a bit of funding to it as well. And the other counties, we've just expressed that if no funding is contributed, that they won't be participating in the strategies section. So we're really hoping that they will commit. It's at least 5,000 has to be committed to participate in the strategy section. We're asking for 10,000 from each. So we're really hoping that that shift will happen, that there will be interest, that it will feel valuable enough to them to do that. Because we really see the strategies portion as very important. So like I said, the project management team has already met. It's probably gonna grow, but we just are starting with a few key players because as we apply for the DHCD grant, which we're partnering with Albemarle County to apply for that, we needed to kind of get the conversation started a little bit more officially. So Stacy Pethia, Antoine Williams, Greg Powell, Margaret Claire, Mel Jones, who is the co-director at VCHR, and then Jonathan Knopf of Housing for Virginia all sat in on that meeting. And so we've kind of got a plan mapped out to get it started. The grants are going in like this month. So we're kind of gonna wait and you know, it's a low chance that it won't go through, but we need to wait and see that that funding comes through. We did have a good public meeting. 5 people showed up, but it was really, really rich discussion. People talked a lot about wanting to see when there are private, public-private partnerships or partnerships between for-profit and nonprofit organizations, that it be really strategic and make sure that it has the long-term affordability planned out, and that nonprofits kind of know best how to take a role in, say, like a LIHTC project partnering with a for-profit group. There was conversation about capacity building in rural areas. There was conversation about talking to major employers and trying to understand what they're paying attention to as far as, especially as far as their lower income employees and how housing is looking for those folks. So it was really rich conversation. So yeah, so funding, like I said, City of Charlottesville, Albemarle, Dominion Energy gave us $10,000. DHCD, a CDBG planning grant, basically is going in for application, and like I said, Virginia Housing. And then we're still speaking with all of the other counties about participation. So that's kind of the quick overview of where we are with the housing study. Any questions on that one?
Questions?
All right, well,
That'll take us to the next update.
yes.
The
So
25 housing summit.
you got a little break from me. We have a video. Oh, I'm pretty sure. Oh, wait, no, I wanted it.
What you did,
Yeah, it's pretty.
right there, second.
Sure. All right, oh, I'll just introduce this, sorry. Thanks. Okay, so we're gonna talk about the housing summit. And one of the people on the housing summit planning committee is Keith, who couldn't be here. So he very kindly left a video for us, so he's gonna introduce it, and then I'll share a bit more of the boring details. But still exciting, all right.
Good afternoon from sunny.
I'm trying to see if I can see this down. Maximum.
So you fast forward. I didn't see you.
That's how I'm getting.
I thought we were gonna get off stuff.
But he was there when he was off.
Or two.
Oh, okay.
And Phoenix, it's 108 degrees with 14% humidity. And let me tell you, it's hot. I don't care if it's a dry heat, wet heat, it is hot. But anyway, guys, sorry I couldn't be with you. I just wanted to take a moment and kind of chat a little bit about Regional Housing Partnership Summit coming up. So Laura Jean is going to give you 2 handouts. One is the actual summit layout where you guys are going to be able to go out and raise some money. So that's what this chat's going to be about, raising money and me beating Jesse Rutherford, which at the moment he's winning, just a note. So she's going to hand 2 things to you, the summit agenda, so you can hand out to some folks. And the second thing is the actual agenda of the summit, because most folks are asking us, so what's actually going to be shown? So we're excited about this, and the reason we're excited about this is the first two summits were kind of describing the problem, for lack of a better term. This is going to be about the solution, and it's going to be a solution-based summit. So please, this is my selfless plug to please go out. We're about $40,000 short, right? And before you know it, it'll be March. So please reach out to your friends, your spheres of influences, or anybody on the street that will give you money to make up this difference. Because first of all, I do need to be Jesse, but that's a whole different issue. But please, let's do this. Please reach out to Laura Jean, get the document, the 2-pager. It's a great way to show folks what we're doing. The agenda is even better because it breaks down for each individual breakout session we're going to do. There's one that I'm particularly excited about doing is where we're going to kind of do a pro and con moderated discussion with people that are pro housing and people that maybe not so much pro housing. So this is going to be an exciting thing, but it's all about solutions. So please raise some money for us. Thanks, guys. I'm going to go continue to sweat. Bye.
I apologize for the sound difficulties, but hopefully you caught the gist of it. We've been working really hard on this housing summit, and it's, I think, really going to be a powerful and effective event. We have official dates. We will be at the Omni on March 13th, which is a Thursday. So please mark your calendars now, save March 13th and plan to be there during the day. The evening before, we'll have the networking event again at Common House. And before that, we will have the RHP meeting. So instead of having it at the end, we're going to have it just before the networking event. So you'll see that on the agenda. Yeah, so we have a date. Like he said, but in case you couldn't hear it, the goal is to really build off of previous summits and to be focused on solutions and really trying to advance the conversation and move it forward. So you can see on the packet that you just received, the agenda is on the first page, but the other 3 pages are the breakout sessions. It's possible that there will be a little bit of shifting and changing, of course, over time. We're still over 6 months away. But we have really nailed down some phenomenal speakers and some really good topics that we think are going to feel really relevant to people. Just highlight a few. We have some really great focal points for policymakers and planners. Rocky Piro, who co-authored a book on comprehensive planning, will be coming and talking about how to integrate your housing planning into your comprehensive planning. We'll have folks from the Harrisonburg Homeless Services Center coming and talking about their process, which was really amazing. A collaboration between nonprofits, between the mayor, between different parts of their local government, putting together a housing first model program, which is pretty amazing. Again, like so many great things on here. I won't go through every single one of them, but Jonathan Knapp himself will be talking about, you know, okay, we're still in real estate, but what are the potential things that we could be doing? And then we'll have folks from Henrico talking about a project that they were able to obtain and fix up that had some serious flaws before, and so they're providing much better affordable housing there now. And then like Keith said, that we're starting the idea of this facilitated conversation. It's going to be a breakout group. It's not going to be in front of the whole space, but where we have 2 folks who are really supportive of developing more affordable housing in our region, 2 folks who are against, and really moderated, not a heated debate. We don't need to see that, but really communicating and listening and trying to have a conversation that kind of shows where some of the stuck places are and where we can work forward together. So really interesting ideas here, I think, that we're trying to move forward. The keynote speaker is Erica Sims from HD Advisors, who does a lot of amazing housing work around the state. So I know she's really excited and has been working on what she wants to talk about for like over a month now. It's going to have some really good things to say. We actually just got an amazing commitment of $10,000 today, so we're making a lot of progress in our sponsorships. We still need probably 10 to 15 additional donors at the 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 level. So I know we have some great folks here who are already working on seeking sponsorships, but just keeping that in mind. And if there's any way to advance that work that you can participate in, please do. And please be in communication with me, Keith, Stacy, like we're all kind of on this planning committee together. Jesse, who am I leaving out? Shayla and Emily. So yeah, reach out to us if you would like to be part of that more and well, and Dave. I knew I was missing something. So, and then this winter, be looking out for tickets. We have increased the price to $55. We did a little survey of previous attendees and it seemed like bumping it up just a tiny bit would be okay with most people. And we're of course gonna offer scholarships like we have before. So as needed, we will do that. Any questions?
Questions? Roll to date. Hammer down.
Yes. Yes, contracts are signed. All right, thank you all.
Thank you. All right, that will move us to item 7. We got a handful of staff updates and Ruth, I believe is going to walk us through one of these.
Yeah, so the first update, we have a new affordable housing Vista, AmeriCorps Vista serving with us, Kaden Pritchett. Kaden, do you want to share anything about yourself?
Yes, I guess I can give a quick little run through my background. I'm actually from Greene County, went to the University of Michigan once I graduated from Monroe. I actually played football there for 4 years, so that was fun. Majored in political science, and then I actually came in here in August, and I graduated this past May, so fairly new, and if you guys have any updates on projects you guys want me to cover, just highlight, because I am involved with the RHP, and I'm also involved with the Housing Summit, so if you guys have any stories, just send me an email, and I tend to reply fairly quick, so, yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Welcome you to the RHP into the TJPDC.
Yep, and we're glad to have them. I just wanted to let you all know that we submitted an application for the 2025 funding. That's the Virginia Eviction Reduction Pilot that provides rent relief and diversion assistance. It's operated by PHA. The 2025 grant runs January 1st through the end of the calendar year. We're currently operating on the 2024 grant, and we expect to hear about funding in probably November or December. I don't have any other grant application updates. That's the only one that's currently active. Other than we did hear about the HPG grant for next year, and that one was awarded at the full amount that we requested.
Congrats.
Which means that we can continue that work. The George Washington Regional Commission out of Fredericksburg is holding a housing summit similar to the one that we hold in October. It's October 24th. If you all are interested in seeing what another community is doing related to housing, that would be a great opportunity. They have started a similar body to the RHP, but it's a little bit younger. It's not as formal yet. And this is, I think, their second summit. I'm actually serving on a panel there to help talk about the PDC perspective of being involved in the housing conversation.
I'll be on a panel as well.
Excellent.
And I think we're talking about the city rezoning process.
Nice. All right. And then lastly, as a staff update, I just wanted to let everyone know that the TJPDC Commission adopted a new remote electronic participation and all virtual meeting policy, which does apply to this body. This body does not need to adopt their own. The major changes in state code that precipitated that policy update are that the TJPDC Commission needs to adopt a policy annually. So they'll be doing that now. And also some additional parameters around what an all virtual meeting looks like. So making sure that there's someone available should the meeting stop being available to the public that can be contacted in real time. Making sure that voting members have their camera on when they're voting. And then just the frequency of meetings. So that's actually loosened a little bit so that we can now do 50% of the meetings virtually, but no 2 consecutive for a particular body. For this group, the RHP full partnership is one body, and then the committees are a separate body. So we could have the next meeting of full partnership as virtual and the next meeting of the executive committee as virtual, and that wouldn't be a problem. There are also some updates to, if you want to read the summary that's in your packet, to how the electronic participation for an in-person meeting is operated, but it's not substantially different. But those are all of my updates.
Great. Any questions on there, please? Yeah, this whole all virtual meeting, it's my understanding is all those folks would be considered not in the meeting because their cameras are off. So if we do an all virtual meeting, which we're going to propose that the December full partnership meeting be an all virtual meeting. It's because of the time of the year. I think it's easier in the day changes, all of that. But it would mean that if you turn the camera on, that moves you out, then that of course has quorum issues. So we'll review all that if we in the December meeting before we get rolling. So everybody knows what the rules are. Great. Well, we are there at the round table, so we'll just go around and I'll just move around the room and then I'll maybe alternate back to grab some online folks. But Emily, you want to start with any updates today?
Sure. I've been working with a group of regional tenant leaders, calling themselves the Charlottesville Alma Regional Tenant Leaders, CATLA. And we've been meeting for about a year. And folks are extremely concerned about the mass displacement happening at Cavalier Crossing or in the works. And also what is happening in the next few years with the expiration of subsidies for the low-income housing tax credit developments for several of them, not all of them, obviously. Otherwise, I do a lot of work with CRHA residents, and I'll let Kathleen do that update if later. Yeah, thanks.
Right. Let's grab someone online. Christopher, Brett, you want to give an update, part of the roundtable? I thought maybe since the mic was might be there. Kathleen, do you want to give an update?
Sure. Hello, everyone. We recently received a HUD Jobs Plus grant, which we're really excited about, which involves place-based job initiatives in the West Haven community, which is very timely as the residents there have just hired an architect to start the planning process. We're also working on our annual plan, which will be publicly posted at the end of October. Have just about finished up everything at Crescent Halls, and the demo work is just about complete at South First Street and 6th Street. We should start demo again soon. I think those are some of the big updates.
Thank you. Kevin, any additional?
I think you guys pretty much heard everything from me today.
And is there, who else is up? Is there anybody else online that we need to get besides Chris?
Not anymore.
Got it. Keep moving around the table. Dave, any additional updates?
I'm good.
Mr. Park?
I mentioned the 124 units in Fluvanna that we're prayerfully hopeful that we'll get COs tomorrow. We've got a 200 unit project in Winchester that's just about completed. 20% of those units are affordable. And then we've got 280 units in Charlestown, West Virginia that are in an opportunity zone in an area that needed some renovation or new construction. And then a number of projects around the state that if we can just get another 50 basis points off the interest rates, we might be able to do them. So.
Fantastic. Very good, thank you, sir. Councilor Payne?
Let's see. Probably the biggest for the city is Call to Mobile Home Park partnership with Habitat PHA. State partners as well as the residents themselves being able to prevent displacement there and long-term do resident involved redevelopment. Which I think along together with Cavalier Crossing has gotten myself and some others thinking about, what could it look like for the city to proactively plan for these LIHTC properties? I'm black, don't know why, but I'm blanking on the name, the larger Hearthwood, I think is either already expired or in 2 years expires, I forget which. But that will be either already underway or soon underway, a major one. And then in the county, there's a number of LIHTC that will expire, so is there a way to kind of plan to avoid displacement there? On that front, the city's chugging along with moving forward with the land bank. Hopefully we'll get a presentation and discussion among council in October about the creation of a land bank. And then the city's new development code every year is reviewed annually. So the planning commission just began that process, but both the planning commission and council will be looking at the affordable housing manual as well as just the development code overall. And I would guess the largest thing to come for that will be eventually a recommendation on either creating some sort of revolving loan fund or tax incentives to help actually see inclusionary zoning units get built as part of new developments. So those are probably the major things.
Awesome. Thank you. Side?
Unfortunately, I wasn't prepared to bring an update from the Workforce Development Board. Since this is my first meeting, but I will be sure to bring something the next time.
And it's real informal, we share what's going on in our space and that sort of thing. So absolutely, we should give you that heads up.
Chair Galloway,
Yes,
I believe we have Christopher Burnham.
Christopher, you want to give an update from your end?
Sure, happy to. Sorry I can't be there in person today, but thanks for giving me audio permission. I visited with my builder peers in Utah earlier this month. People are largely reporting sales on track with maybe a little bit of butterflies tied to interest rates, also some optimism as mortgage rates have come down recently. There were also mixed reports on ability to hit production goals. I would say probably half the room is on target for their production goals, which I think is a good sign as it relates to shortage. The other half of the room is still looking for strategies to increase their production. My company is in that boat too, as we believe we're still facing some lasting shortage issues in the area. Additionally, not as Bramante Homes, but as Christopher Bremen, I've been working with Greg Powell and other members of the community to learn more about the upzone in the city of Charlottesville and apply that to opportunities we see within the marketplace. Still seeing some barriers related to cost of construction, also acquisition of land or buildings and interest rates, but we continue to carry that torch, and I'll be happy to report back when we see that hopefully better and improved on, at least from my perspective. Thanks for the opportunity to report.
Thank you, sir. Colette?
Sure. So the university is progressing on its 3 different affordable housing projects. The first one being Wardland and 10th, which is probably the furthest along. Our developer, POA, is in the community engagement and entitlement process. They have submitted a site plan to the city. And I think I've reported in the past that we're anticipating kind of earliest construction start to be in 2026. Our Piedmont site, Sunshine, you probably certainly know more about this than I do, but I think you're in pre-construction activities, due diligence.
Yeah, diligence, I can talk about that briefly.
Okay. And then on the North Fork site, I think we're thinking tentatively right now that we do an RFQ for a developer sometime this fall.
For the community land trust, this summer we just did 2 exciting acquisitions, one in Belmont and one in Tenth and Gage neighborhood, both of which will be able to take advantage of the new development code for developing affordable home ownership. In the Belmont one, the max would be 12 units, and as far as we have it now, they fit, but we're still working on the design there. And then in 10th and Gage, we can do 2 units. So our particular intent page, we're looking forward to working with the community, and this would be the first new construction since Dairy Market, there, I think. And just number one, want to be sensitive to that. Number two, as the land trust, like we want to be community building. Same goes in Beaumont though. And then related to the second page, also we created a role very close to raising the funding for our community engagement coordinator. I'm happy to pass it along here once we post it. With the idea that particularly in Santa Fe, Rose Hill and Pikeville, there is a desire to preserve affordability in the homes, and that's what we're built for. So building partnerships with the neighborhood association and residents of those neighborhoods to identify properties and then do the strategies to either preserve existing homes and keep them permanently affordable or build them. But I will echo the challenges on construction regarding the development code, that there are still challenges with costs, especially with when it comes to utilities and in adding more density.
Where was the Belmont site?
It's on Rift Street.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
We have a lot going on, but I'll just focus in on a couple of updates. One is that Inglewood Phase 2, we've been caught in sort of bureaucratic limbo with HUD for the last 6 months or so, but we finally got that resolved earlier this week. So we are now aiming solidly towards starting construction in the early November timeframe, which the residents have been maybe not patiently, but waiting for, as you know, to keep the progress moving. So that'll start, and that'll include about 100 new rental homes, our first 4 community land trust homeownership opportunities on the site, and then a new early learning center and community center. 501 Cherry Avenue, that's been in the news to some extent recently. That's a partnership between ourselves, the Pikeville Neighborhood Association, and Woodard Properties, looking to build 71 affordable apartments, a new permanent location for the Music Resource Center, and then ideally a new grocery store, neighborhood scale grocery store that is rooted in the community. There's still the biggest question mark is still around that grocery space and trying to figure that out, and both on the operator side, who can do it, and then also just to cover the cost of that space, because everyone probably knows, but groceries in general have very thin margins, and if we're going to have a grocery that's affordable to the community and also healthy food, we need to be figuring out how to cover the cost of the construction itself. So that's a work in progress. And then lastly, I'll focus on the Piedmont site in partnership with UVA. It's a little bit slower than the 10th and Workman site, in part because we actually have to go through a rezoning process first. In order to do that, we need to finalize the meets and bounds on the site, and there's been a number of factors which have slowed that process down. There's a major duct bank that runs through the site that cannot move. An electrical duct bank that cannot move. There's that factor. And then the other sort of unexpected factor is that it's at the intersection of UVA, the city, and the county, and where utilities come in and who is jurisdictionally overseeing which, and that has been more complicated than expected. There's overlap there. Again, we think we figured that out too. We think we have a path forward, but it's just taken time. So the goal is to submit for rezoning soon, but then we have to finalize the meets and bounds with UVA, and then we'll be ready to go.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Habitat, a lot going on, like Sunshine will try to hit the high points at Southwood. We're about a year away from completion of phase 1, which will be about 350 units total, about 65% of which are affordable. The last unit to be done are part of a beautiful set of buildings that PHA is building, Live Tech. Apartments, you should go and see, it's really nice. We're in the meantime working with residents on the design of Village 5, actually. So we're designing all the way through 2030 right now. And that will, after that's done, we'll have 4 or 5 villages left. Go, we are waiting for some receivables, to continue site work on phase 2. We still have some receivables unreceived. At Carlton, in the city, I don't use the M word much, but it was truly a miracle the way everyone pulled together. The city was incredible, moving at warp speed to back loan, the PHA leverage. Legal aid was on the ground, working with residents almost the day of the notification. We collectively pulled off something that I don't think anybody who approved the statute thought was possible, and it's actually success. Because the statute doesn't allow for a right of first refusal and it gives you a ridiculously short period of time. We closed last Friday. So now collectively, we formed a JV with Piedmont Housing Alliance, so Habitat, and Piedmont Housing Alliance formed a joint venture called Habitat Carlton Alliance that now owns the mobile home park. It's contracting with Habitat to manage the mobile home park, and we are now meeting individually with every resident of the park to find out their hopes, dreams, and aspirations, what they bring to the table. We've formed a resident committee to help establish the rules that we'll enforce, but we don't want to enforce our rules, we want to enforce their rules, and begin to lead toward resident ownership of the site. So thankfully, we have 15 years of experience now figuring out how to do this. There's a lot of work ahead, but it's really exciting, and I've never been part of a collaboration with so many great people that came together. On the advocacy side, there are a number of things that we're looking at. We are looking at 605. We are still periodically having conversations with folks at 605 Mobile Home Park in Louisa who are facing increasing rent and a potential displacing. We're also looking at the rezoning that's going to come in front of the Board of Supervisors in December, I think, for rezoning for mobile home park in Southern Albemarle County. And we're looking carefully at that. We're hoping that we can get involved to potentially suggest, if it does go forward, some of the conditions by which it could go. And on the national level, Habitat International has a policy platform. We are moving forward with trying to move through Congress a home ownership supply initiative, which is brand big. Thinking about it sort of like a GI Bill, but it's going to be a combination of funding, regulatory reforms, so zoning reforms in exchange for block grants, a number of initiatives that can help us as a nation begin to close the yawning supply gap that has been growing bigger and bigger over the last bunch of years. And finally, we're about to start building in the city again. We haven't built much in the city for a while, but we'll be starting 16 units in the neighborhood.
A lot, thank you. And Albemarle, I know that I don't know the dates, but I know this fall, we should be having conversations about housing trust fund, which was always the next big topic for us. Host the developer incentive piece. So again, not sure of the timing of that, but I believe it'll be coming on an upcoming agenda. Just at our last meeting, we kind of maneuvered or moved some ARPA money that didn't get used, that was set aside for, wasn't set aside, we've already paid it to the ARPA, it's actually our money, but it was originally sourced from ARPA. But the spirit of the ARPA funds were to try to get it out to the community as fast as possible. So we were doing a water and sewer program, not as many people came out to take advantage of or qualified for. So we reallocated the additional 6 homes that would help with the water and sewer, but then some money went to our emergency assistance fund, which sometimes helps with rental. What am I trying to say? Rental relief. Area. And then money also going to, and I'm not remembering the target, but the idea is to help with having a year-round low barrier emergency shelter for homes. So some funds freed up for that. Not that the funds will be lost for the water and sewer program. That's probably going to end up being an ongoing budget item because it seems to be a worthwhile program and one that we'll need to do ongoing. So that'll just kind of maneuver some of this money around to free it up to get it out. Some of that money can come from a future budget, so that had just happened. Trying to remember if there's anything else out there from Albemarle. I will say that is he still, Neil's still on there, did an article today on Whitney Houston's How Will I Know, talking about not just the city's rezoning, but the developer incentive program. I think Whitney Houston had a song that says, what, who will believe, or when you believe, I think is the answer I would say, Neil, is when you believe, Neil, that's when it'll. I will tell you that I've learned over the last 2 months, and I will put myself out there to again have developers that, if you flat out think it just is bad, then bring the project forward so we can discuss it. Happy to do that. But each developer I've talked to since we've passed it has yet to be able to explain the program correctly back to me. And that's problematic, because if you don't understand the program clearly, it could be leading to a different opinion of the program. Now, I'm not saying, there are some developers I don't think have engaged with it yet or have had need to, so I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying that there were moving pieces up until the day we passed that incentive program. So confusion was going to be part of this, I think, because of the way we got to the end goal. So I'm just saying that if there are projects in place that the county, both the CBD team and the finance team and at the county executive level are certainly ready to engage and discuss projects that and how it would work specifically with the incentive program that we passed to see if it potentially works for the projects. If it's coming out of those conversations that they don't, as a supervisor, I am very interested in that, because we built the flexibility in to be able to pivot if needed. But there hasn't been a lot of those conversations to suggest that we need to pivot. So to Neil's point, he's saying, well, we don't want to wait around for 20 or 30 years to say, oh, that was a bad idea. Well, if you've got the data that suggests it is a terrible idea, then we need to have that conversation and figure out what the good idea is, because we don't want to stymie overall housing production. So I'm just throwing that out there as the county supervisor saying, I'm certainly willing to get into a room, but also staff is as well. They're probably the better people to be having the conversation with, although my finger has been on this pulse and trying to stay with it as much as I can. So happy to do it. So just shoot me an email, or Ann Wall is the person at the county staff level that is, I know, been involved with that since we passed that particular program. It's good to use one other piece just to say that a week or so ago, the city council and the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors met in a joint meeting around regional transit authority. I think this is pertinent to the housing conversation. End of the day, there was some conversation about how Charlottesville and Albemarle and UVA could be your kind of starting off people there. Especially Charlottesville and Albemarle would take the lead in getting this up and running and moving. But it's a regional piece that's not supposed to stop at Charlottesville and Albemarle. And a lot of the rural counties are kind of in a wait and see approach, especially for any sort of funding type of piece. But there's going to be advocacy needed at the General Assembly level to be able to get this authority in place. And the advocacy is always better when you have more people helping to advocate. So I'm just throwing this out there for those that I know are in the housing space, that if you have good folks in that area that would be willing to help lobby at the General Assembly level to help get this regional transit authority in place, it doesn't commit the rural counties, Greene, Louisa, Flavanna, or Nelson, to any funds at this time. But it puts in the structure that needs to be in place so that down the road, as we try to pull in and solve the rural transit issues, having that done at the General Assembly level needs to happen first. And that can take 2, 3, 4 years, as we all know, getting through that. So just throwing that out, that as we move towards the next session, if you see some of that coming forward, Just asking that, because I know these sites that you just put in, if there was.
Have you
beyond
spoken
jobs,
to Jennifer Schmack and Andy Wade, the economic development people?
I don't, I'm assuming, coming out of that meeting, it raised this point that it's better to pull people in now for advocacy, so I expect whoever hasn't been reached out to, they will be. 'Cause
Okay,
there was
if
a
you
lot-
need help, yeah, if you need assistance, of course, yeah, we can help advocate that it would be helpful for housing.
And I forget the name of do you remember the exact name of the thing that needs to pass at the state? This is around the actual central part of,
Yeah. I don't even think there's a name, but just to authorize any funding source that we collectively chose to be the steady permanent funding source that goes directly to the transit.
and again, it wouldn't commit them to funding, they still have to make the decision whether or not they want to participate, et cetera. But the governance structure is starting to piece out, et cetera, so. I think there's a great power at the General Assembly when you see Charlottesville and Albemarle advocating for something, politically, you're not too shocked by that. But if you see the 6 counties that are in our TJPDC all advocating for something, that's a different political statement than versus the traditional R's and D's that sometimes are reflected. So just throwing that out there as a food for thought, and more to come on that as we get closer to the General Assembly time. Well, great, thank you, you're there, we've done a little early today.
So I have one update
Yeah.
that came after I sent out the agenda. The TJPDC posted an RFP for funding for affordable housing units. It's $660,000 through the Virginia Housing PDC Development Grant that has become available. We originally received $2 million and a bunch of it has been allocated and used, but this chunk of it is not being able to be used for the project that it had been allocated for. So we put out this RFP and we are asking for proposals for the use of this funds. They can be used for new rental or home ownership units for folks who are 80% AMI or lower. It can be used for gap funding for new units, and $355,000 of it can be used for property acquisition. The catch is that the units have to be CO'd by June 30th of next year. So this would be great for any existing projects that are in need of gap funding. Not really great if you are doing new construction. Yes.
I was kind of clear from the RFP if this is one award of 660 or you divide it? Okay.
It's we have 660,000 available. We could potentially, based on the RFP, award it to multiple, like a portion of it to multiple proposals, but we may just award it to a single entity.
Great.
So I will send an email to you all with information on where to get the RFP documentation.
And there was what we're getting now, there was a link or something else we were asked to email now.
The video.
The video.
Oh, the video when they. So our next executive committee meeting is on October 23rd. Next full partnership meeting is on December 18th, and we are going to put out public notice that will be an all virtual meeting. So just want to note that because that's a little different because of the holiday than what our normal time. Yeah, that's not different.
It is different. Otherwise, it would be Christmas.
So I think we want to meet on that today. You'll be watching for that coming out for your calendars. And hopefully we shouldn't have any quorum issues when it's all virtual. We tend to get better. Get out all the people in the room together. So great. Well, I appreciate everybody's time today. It's good to see you all. Hard to believe it's in September, the fall already, but hope you're all doing well outside of your housing work, and we'll see you in December online.
Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned. Tomorrow.